Today we're talking about literal equations and formulas. So literal equations are equations that we're talking about with real life situations. And formulas are things like finding the area of a triangle, finding the circumference of a circle, things that you've already seen before. So this would represent a literal equation. It's telling me this equation here, where x is the number of pizzas and y is the number of sandwiches. So the question is, how many sandwiches can you buy if you buy 3 pizzas? And then what if you buy 6 pizzas? So when you're solving this, you're always using the original equation. In this case, the first one I'm solving is when pizzas is 3. Well, I know that pizzas is my x. So I'm going to go back and put 10 times 3 plus 5y equals 80. Because I want to figure out what y is, so how many sandwiches I have. So 10 times 3 would give me 30 plus 5y equals 80. Subtract 30 from both sides. 5y is equal to 50. Divide by 5, and I get y is equal to 10. But I actually have to, since this is a literal equation, I had to represent what 10 means. So I would say 10, and then I would write sandwiches. I want you to pause the video and figure out how many sandwiches you buy if you bought 6 pizzas. You should have gotten 4 sandwiches. So again, the literal equation was representing sandwiches and pizza, and I would use that equation to help me solve how many pizza and sandwiches I would buy. Now I have an equation and it has 2 variables, and first thing it says to do is to solve for m. So I'm going to write out this equation is equal to 2m minus 5n. And I'm going to box in what I want to get alone. I want to get this all by itself. So this is the same thing that we have been doing. Just think as 5n as a different number. So I want to get rid of this 5n first because it's adding or subtracting to my variable. And since it's subtracting, the opposite of subtracting would be adding. Now when I add 5n to both sides of my equation, I cannot combine those two terms because they are not the same. And then the next step, this is times, so the opposite of timesing something would be dividing. So I'm going to divide by 2. So now I know that 4 plus 5n divided by 2 is equal to m. So now when I look at my second part, it says what values of m when n is equal to these 3 numbers. So now I already have my equation set up, so all I have to do is plug in the one number. So if I do it for the first one, I would 4 plus 5 times negative 2 is my first problem, divide by 2. Remember, this whole thing is being divided by 2, so I want to take care of the top first. So 4 plus 5 times negative 2 simplifies to 4 minus 10 divided by 2. 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Divide that by 2 is negative 3. So that would be the answer to my first one. Pause the video and solve for when n is equal to 2 and 0. Your other 2 answers should be 2 and 7. 5 times 0 is 0. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus 4 is 14. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. This next question says, what equation do you get when you solve for x? The first thing I'm going to do right now is rewrite my equation. ax minus bx equals c. Well, just looking at this, I see that both a and b have an x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out an x here and take out an x here. So it's going to be factoring out, which is the opposite thing of distributing. So if I take out an x, I'm left with a minus b is equal to c. Now I'm going to box in what I want to get by itself. I want to get that x all by itself. And I see that this is x times a minus b. So the opposite of timesing would be dividing. So I'm going to divide on both sides. And this is what is attached to my x. This is what I want to get rid of. So I want to divide by a minus b. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So in this case, x is going to be equal to c divided by A minus B. Here are a list of formulas that some you might already know, some you need a refresher. If there's any formulas that you need a refresher, you should pause and write down the formula. I would say especially this last one, temperature or distance. Those are two that we typically do not use on a regular basis. So this next question says solve for R. I'm going to box in what I want to get by itself. I want to get R all alone. And I see that this is saying 2 pi times R. So whatever I want to get rid of is the multiplication. So I'm going to divide on both sides because that's the opposite of multiplying. And I want to get rid of this 2R, or 2 pi I should say. And so whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now I know C divided by 2 pi is equal to R. And that would be my final answer. And I'm going to use that answer for my next. Find R if C is equal to 64. Well, we just found that C divided by 2 pi is equal to R. So now that we already got R all by itself, I'm just going to plug 64 in for C. So I have 64 divided by 2 pi. And I want to simplify that. And I'm going to use 3.14 as pi. And you should always round to the nearest hundredth. So in that case, this would be 10.19 is equal to R. And the little squigglies is saying that that's an estimate value. So that was our lesson on literal equations and formulas. Make sure to fill out the Google form, submit it, and if you did not take any notes, go back and take notes. Remember, you must take notes. Have a great, grand, and wonderful evening.